Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
Your report makes clear that the FBI had a legitimate reason to investigate the Trump campaign. Is that correct?
That's right. It was sufficient predication.
And in addition, your office found no evidence that the FBI launched a politically motivated investigation. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And another key finding was that the FBI committed several errors in his applications and in their applications to surveil Carter Page.
Or maybe more than several.
And as the FBI Director Wray himself has acknowledged, your investigation found serious FBI misconduct that needs to be addressed. And Director Wray also said that the FBI fully accepts your investigation's findings. Is that correct? On the other hand, Attorney General Barr has been highly critical of your findings. During the final stages of your investigation, he even embarked on his own personal investigation by meeting with foreign leaders in foreign lands, apparently in search of evidence that contradicts the fact that Russia interfered in the 2016 United States presidential election to benefit Trump. Clearly, Barr's investigation, which was launched to do the bidding of President Trump, has two objectives. One, to undermine the integrity of our intelligence community. The goal, to cast doubt on the finding that Russia interfered in the 2016 election in order to benefit the Trump campaign. And two, to intimidate the men and women of our intelligence community by suggesting that our national security professionals will face serious consequences if they investigate wrongdoing on the part of this president or his operatives. So, General Horowitz, I appreciate your extensive work and the work that your office has devoted to this investigation. But in addition, you have the power and the duty to investigate misconduct committed by the Attorney General of the United States, who is doing the bidding of the president to undermine our intelligence community. And I trust you take that duty seriously.
I do, and I'd just like to add that under the law, under the Inspector General Act, it carves out from my authority the ability to look at misconduct by department lawyers from the line lawyer all the way to the top and the Attorney General.
But history has also shown us that the Inspector General can participate in an investigation of the Attorney General, and that in fact happened with General Gonzalez. Do you recall that?
That happened, and it's worth noting, that happened after the Attorney General said our office was not going to get the case, that it was going to go to the Office of Professional Responsibility, and the choice for our office was whether to join that investigation or not. But that wasn't initiated through us.
So
that's the important point. The law has to change, Senator. And
so are you recommending the law?
Absolutely.
If I propose legislation that would change the law, would you support that?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, there's legislation. Senator Lee has sponsored, several members have co-sponsored. The House has passed this unanimously.
And you would support it?
Absolutely, 100%.
So it was recently reported that the president's personal attorney, Rudy Giuliani, asked Ukrainians to help search for dirt of the political rivals of the president. In exchange for the help, Giuliani offered to help fix criminal cases against them at DOJ. Giuliani and his associates, two of whom have been indicted and are now in federal custody, allegedly reached out to a Ukrainian energy tycoon who faced legal problems in America. In exchange for helping find dirt on the president's political rivals, Giuliani's associates reportedly connected the Ukrainian with lawyers who could get a top-level meeting at the United States Department of Justice. In essence, Giuliani's scheme was an attempt to trade get-out-of-jail-free cards for political favors. As part of Giuliani's plan, Attorney General Barr met with the Ukrainians' lawyers, who asked that the Department of Justice withdraw evidence in the tycoon's bribery prosecution. Earlier today, you said you are not investigating matters related to ongoing Ukraine issues. Does that mean that you have decided not to investigate these incidents?
No. As I think mentioned in a recent letter, and I've been in touch with fellow IGs who've been asked by members to look at those issues. We've been in communication with each other. I think as Mr. Fine, the Defense Department IG, wrote to several members of Congress, he was foregoing at the time undertaking any work while the House investigation proceeded and any matters here in the Senate. And, as I mentioned, we will look accordingly at any action that we have the jurisdiction to review. Getting back to the earlier Section 80 discussion, no other IG has that limitation, by the way. So they can investigate their secretary, deputy secretary, administrator, whomever. I just point that out because that's important to keep in mind as we get requests. And why are we different than the State Department IG, the EPA IG, the other IGs?
Couldn't agree with you more. Do you agree that if true, Giuliani's scheme is alarming?
I think anything like that would be very concerning.
And Mr. Giuliani recently returned to Ukraine in search of dirt on the president's political rivals, apparently in order to cook up a dossier of his own. Yesterday, he told reporters that President Trump asked him to brief the Justice Department and Senate Republicans on what, if anything, he finds. Do you and are you concerned that the Justice Department would coordinate with the president's personal lawyer on a scheme clearly designed to benefit the president's political campaign?
I'm going to look at the evidence myself and facts. I've learned to, before taking any action, to not just rely on news reports or other allegations, but to actually spend the time to look at them. So I'd ask to take a look at that, and again, happy to come in and meet with you and talk with you.
Please do. I'd appreciate that. Is it appropriate for the Attorney General or anyone at the Department of Justice to take actions that are solely designed to benefit the president politically?
I think that would create questions on various rules at the department and practices at the department.
During Attorney General Barr's last appearance before this committee, I asked him, has the president or anyone at the White House ever suggested that you open an investigation of anyone? After pondering the word suggest, the Attorney General declined to answer. The Attorney General's non-response suggested to many that he has opened politically motivated investigations. Indeed, we know that during a call with the president of Ukraine, President Trump said that Attorney General Barr would follow up regarding the quote-unquote favor that the president demanded. Did the Attorney General or anyone at Justice follow up with the president's call?
I don't know the answer to that question. And
Does
again,
anyone in your office know the answer to that question?
I don't believe anybody in my office would know it. And frankly, again, it gets to the question of a decision by the Attorney General whether to open an investigation or not, which in most instances, I won't foreclose it completely, but in most instances would fall squarely within the prohibition on my jurisdiction.
President Trump's phone conversation was an apparent effort to solicit foreign interference in the 2020 election. And the call involved officials at multiple agencies, including the Department of Justice, the State Department, the Office of Management and Budget, and others. Are you working with the inspectors general of these various agencies on that issue?
As I mentioned, allegations that come in, we'll talk with our fellow IGs.
On that specific one, are you working with other IGs?
We're not. I don't have any ongoing work at this point. Again, I'm not sure what if I'd have a statutory authority to look at actions by lawyers at the department related to misconduct.
Have you been approached by any other IGs to work with them on an investigation that related to that phone call? I'll
say we've had discussions generally. I don't know whether other IGs at this point have or do not have ongoing investigations.
You've had conversations generally about this phone call?
About generally Ukraine-related matters and discussions generally.
How about specifically about this phone call?
I don't recall, as I sit here, discussions about it. But again, you have to
refresh your memory.
Refresh my recollection on this issue. I've obviously been spending a fair amount of time preparing to deal with the 400-plus page report. that we're talking about today.
It is Friday, the 13th of December of 2019, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam, and our daily special is Blue Moon Spirits Fridays, because we are all Nighthawks in the Diner of Life. Well, before we get started here, I just want to note that as we get closer to the end of the year, and especially with Christmas coming up, this is now the first Christmas that we will have without our son. And, well, Dad, too, because my grandkids are obviously emotionally invested in this as well. Through no fault of their own, except that we all exist on this plane of existence. So I've had a bit of a hard time this morning trying to keep it together, and I apologize if I have a bit of a down tone, because I do. I have a bit of a down tone, manifested from feeling somewhat down. It washes over me. I will confess that when the first months of dealing with my son's demise, it was rougher than I ever could have imagined, and there was not a day, many times during the day, when I'd break down. I notice now that though thoughts of him and a bit of that feeling of loss, sure, that happens many times during the day still, but I've been able to regulate, I guess, the what do we call it? The breakdowns, which I was unable to do this morning. And, it was a weeping mess. I miss him. I remember all the convincing that I put at myself that it's okay, he's still here, and, the universe is mysterious, and the energy and atoms and all of that. And it was, it was a bit of consolation for myself. But when it really gets down to it, I miss talking with him. I miss his laugh. I miss his jokes. I miss his subtle way of making a joke. I miss his questions, about a particular historical event, and maybe I can add some color to it, or at least grab the author off the shelves and let him read about it. I miss that. So, Christmas is supposed to be a happy time, one of rebirth. Everybody that I've spoken to who has been in not exact but similar situations in the loss of a loved one through demise has told me that it never goes away. I heard that. Maybe part of me didn't want to believe it. But I am resigned. I suppose 20 years from now, if I'm lucky to grieve, because I could still be breathing or not, the feeling of loss will still be great, and really more than I can handle in a moment. Life is strange. Well, why don't we go ahead and get into our news today? Obviously, we had the impeachment debate, the markup. Of course, it wasn't really a markup because, amendments are proposed, voted on, and, put into a bill, whatever that bill is. But the two articles of impeachment are enough. It says what it says. The Republicans wasted all day. They were all upset. We never get to talk. We never get to talk. Well, they got to talk all day, and their gambit was to delay that debate all day into late night so that the Democrats would have to vote in the dead of night. Then they'd have a soundbite. And how Shifty Schiff manipulated this whole thing so that the American public didn't know. And boy, were they livid when we took their gambit away. We being Nadler, gaveling the hearing into recess until this morning. Now, I should remind folks that I do have to put myself in a bubble and not bring in any news, so I am not aware of how that vote is going, but we know where the vote is going. Articles of impeachment will be passed out of the judiciary. It will go to the full floor next week. It will be voted on. And Mitch McConnell has already fixed the trial. He's already gone on Fox and said, don't worry, we are in consultation with the suspect so that he can get a fair trial in which he is totally absolved of anything and he can continue doing what he's doing because we need to pack the courts more. And Mitch McConnell, Moscow Mitch McConnell, was gleeful about holding up jurist openings during the last 2 years of Obama's term. He was on Hannity, and Hannity said, I was unaware of how many vacancies Obama left, like it was Obama's fault. But Mitch McConnell, Moscow Mitch McConnell, is too full of himself to just let that go by. No, he had to put in his diabolical turn and remind Sean, well, I was involved in that. The Judge Project. Packing the courts. And he held up the Merrick Garland nomination so he could get in his people, and he did. And he had that little diabolical laugh. And Moscow Mitch, your time will come too. Your time in the barrel will come too, and you will not be Senate Majority Leader. Let's hope. Because, well, on the other hand, I got to tell you, you can't trust Vlad. Vlad is helping you now, but the GOP has to remember their server was hacked too. And Vlad knows everything they did too. And when he starts leaking that out, I got to say, maybe he already has. For certain down ticket races, maybe, huh? Maybe. There's a lot of GOP who have resigned because they just don't want to deal with this administration. It makes one wonder how much Vlad had on them. Regardless, when Vlad turns on you, it's not nice. In fact, there are many convenient endings that can occur if you're not careful. So, we used to laugh at the movie Red Dawn because, it was kind of good fun. Yeah. But there are certain, I don't know, little memes that make sense. And I mentioned the mayor, the Vichy mayor who turned people over to the Ruskies, the Soviets. Well, he was lined up along the rock pile too. All right. So all these GOPers thinking that they're holding on to power by siding with Vlad will be lined up on the rock pile figuratively or literally. Avenge me, boys. All right, what's on the rest of the menu? Well, Kamala Harris at the top there, focused on the criminality of the Attorney General and the former New York City Mayor. Who could those be? Yeah, Barr and Rudy. On the rest of the menu, 191 House Republicans voted against slashing the costs of prescription drugs. Maybe they got a sweetheart deal with someone, something. Let's follow the money is what they say. You not only have to follow the rubles, you got to follow the dollars too. The Pentagon is investigating the wall contract awarded to a company Trump saw on Fox. And Kentucky's new Democratic governor restored the voting rights for more than 100,000 people. Moscow Mitch comes from Kentucky. Maybe something can be done, but I suspect that those 100,000 people, nonviolent felons who have now had their voting rights restored, will have to pay some sort of poll tax. Mitch will see to it. After the break, we then move to the chef's table, where a Salvadoran asylum seeker sent to Mexico to await his court hearing was kidnapped and murdered. And Australia named its first female intelligence chief. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Of our homepage at netrootsradio.com. To the rightish of the page is our chat room link, so do engage there. It's right there by the social media scroll, so you can catch up what's going on in social media as well. Kelly Lincoln monitors the chat room link, and she does so much more than that, so we want to thank Kelly. Thank you, Kelly. To the leftish of the page from the chat room link at the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com is the link to our Patreon page. Now, we have chosen Patreon because their politics is less onerous and odorous than PayPal, though one can never extricate themselves completely from PayPal, now can they? Regardless, if you could become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio, your recurring contribution helps us pay our bills and get the newest machinery we need to get. You know, I'm getting some weird software degradation. I'm going to have to reboot the PC again. Hopefully everything gets restored. Ooh, boy. But regardless, the MacBook and this little Dell PC, we need to replace them. They were newish when we got them about over 4 years ago now. And that was halfway in between our current 8-year-plus run of continuous 24/7, 365 resistance broadcasting. I'll get it out, I promise. So thank you for your generosity. We'll keep going as long as we can. And that's, look, I pretty much made a promise to my son, okay? And the resistance won't end when we get the orange demagogue out of there, because the work's still going to continue. You know, when they talk about impeachment as overturning the election, no, we get Pence. It's going to be really hard to impeach him, though he needs to be. And Bill Barr needs to go to jail. So we have our work cut out for us. But I promised my son that my energy would not wane or lag, and it will be put towards removing this fellow from office, one way or the other. I'm happy to vote him out. And if he doesn't get voted out, which I sometimes fear, because look what happened in Great Britain, we have our work cut out for us even more. So thank you for your generosity for allowing us to fulfill our civic duty, and me personally in being able to fulfill a promise to my son. Thank you. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, it is so simple because Tom takes care of that. All you have to do is go to @NetrootsRadio. Thank you, Tom. Thank you. Follow me on Twitter. That's a pretty good spot to follow me on Twitter at Justice Putnam, indeed. And I also post the show notes and links diary on Daily Kos about 10 minutes before showtime for people's social media linkage pleasure. Follow the show on Twitter at Cookbook West and pick up podcasts, the most important part of this spiel. Pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, etc., etc., etc. Oh, so much Latin. Wow, you know, we have etc. and quid pro quo. Wow, so much Latin. How will Americans ever understand it? Eek. Man, talk about performative. You know, the GOP was accused of taking acting classes in college. It looks like method acting to me. They're drawing on some deep well of angst to be able to put on that performative spectacle. Boy, and Jim Jordan. We all know about him. But Doug Collins? I want to know what happened in his childhood. I think some hot wax was maybe poured on him and it wasn't fun. That could be. He harbors some, shall we say, repressed behaviors that just can't help but bubble out at the inopportune times. Nah, he was drawing on a deep well of angst and anguish and, shall we just say, grievance. A lot of grievance there. Just speaking to the base. Just speaking to the base. All right, let's get into this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I really do like that Nadler took everybody by surprise. And the GOP was so pissed. I loved it. They had their whole performative spectacle ready. And now they have to come back and try to recapture the enthusiasm that they had back last night. Yeah, now they're all going to be awake. And this is going to be for the world to see. Not done in the dead of night. All right. Thank you, Nadler. That was pretty damn good. I actually think that maybe Nancy had something to do with that. And keep it quiet on our side, too. It worked. All right. Let's get into this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. Oh, I failed to mention the virtual French 77s are ready for your virtual imbibing pleasure. All right. First offering comes out of The American Independent by Dan Desai Martin. The House of Representatives took the issue of high prescription drug costs head on yesterday, Thursday, passing a bill that promises to lower the cost of medication associated with cancer, asthma, and many other conditions. Oh, is this going to go to Moscow Mitch, the Grim Reaper's graveyard in the Senate? Yes, it will. By a 230 to 192 vote, H.R. 3, the Elijah Cummings, well, full disclosure here, is actually named the Elijah E. Cummings Lower Drug Costs Now Act, passed on a largely party line vote. Every Democrat supported the legislation, joined by only 2 Republicans, with the lone House Independent, Justin Amish of Michigan, voting no. And, of course, the bill was named after the late Representative Elijah Cummings, Democratic member from Maryland, who passed away earlier this year. According to National Public Radio, the legislation would allow the federal government to negotiate the cost of prescription drugs for Medicare. Oh, it was illegal for a while there, remember, when the Republicans rammed that down during Obama's administration, so you can blame the black guy for it happening during his time. And let's see, limit out-of-pocket costs for Medicare participants and prevent drug price hikes. The Trump administration vowed to veto the legislation if it ever comes to his desk. Now, Representative DUI Matt Gaetz is one of the Republicans who voted against this measure. More than 1 in 5 residents of his home state of Florida suffer from arthritis. Yet Gaetz voted against reducing the total cost on most arthritis medication from roughly $40,000 to $10,000 a year, because I think he's getting paid on a percentage. The higher those drug costs, the more he gets from the drug companies. Trump often accuses the House Democrats of focusing on impeachment rather than legislation. Well, despite Trump's criticism, the vote to lower prescription drug prices came the same week House leaders unveiled 2 articles of impeachment against Trump, and the same day the House Judiciary Committee debated to approve those articles, with the vote coming up today. Well, of course, I did lift my head up just a bit out of the bubble, and as you know, and I just found out, the impeachment articles have been voted on and approved, so impeachment now goes to the full House. And I suppose the dissembling is really going to start happening now. Yeah, I'm already getting hit up by all the troll bots. Not all of them, but quite a few. It's funny, there was one that has 2 followers, been around since 2011. Now, I may not be counting this entity's full posts because maybe I'm not able to access all of them. But since 2011, there's only been a handful of posts, retweets, I should mention. Though I posted about the recess from last night, and this troll bot got me 2 followers and follows a few other people. But the account had pretty much been inactive. No posts, no retweets, nothing since May. And it's active now. And there's a few others that look like they could be real, and maybe they are. Maybe they're just trolls rather than bots. And they're doing the work. Yep, they're doing the work. All right. This next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Blue Moon Spirits Fridays, is by anonymous worker bees at the Associated Press. The Defense Department's internal watchdog is investigating a $400 million border wall contract awarded to a firm that used multiple appearances on Fox News to push for the job. The Pentagon's Inspector General sent a letter Thursday, that was yesterday, to House Homeland Committee Chairman Benny Thompson, telling him the contract awarded to North Dakota-based firm Fisher Sand and Gravel Company would be audited. Now, Thompson, Democratic member from Mississippi, asked for the review last week in part over concerns the proposals did not meet operational requirements and prototypes that came in late and over budget. Tommy Fisher, the head of the family business, said there would be nothing to find in an audit. We were told we were the lowest priced and best value, he said. We look forward to working with the Army Corps of Engineers. Yeah, $400 million. The border wall is one of Trump's top priorities. He campaigned on a promise to build a big, beautiful wall and said Mexico would pay for it, and promised to build 450 to 500 miles of wall by the end of 2020. Mexico is not paying, and as of November 1st, Trump had built a total of 78 miles. Trump's effort to push through funding using money from the Pentagon after Congress refused to fund the wall has been met with resistance and lawsuits. A federal judge this week blocked the administration from spending some department money, the Defense Department money, on the barrier. Now, the company was awarded a contract on the 2nd of December to build 31 miles of wall in Arizona to the tune of $400 million. And they were the lowest bid? Oh, wow. Maybe I ought to get on Fox News and start, advertising my abilities. All right. Fisher had made a number of appearances on Trump's favorite cable news channel, Fox News, talking about his desire to win a contract. His firm, though, has little experience with such construction, and a previous proposal was rejected. Fisher said his company would do the work for $13 million a mile. He said the next closest bid was $20 million. Wow. I don't know. I've built some fences. I think I could come under bid. A letter from the Army Corps, when Fisher was awarded the contract, said the company's proposal was both technically acceptable and the best priced. Two administration officials familiar with the matter told the AP this year that Trump aggressively pushed the Fisher's firm's bid with the heads of Homeland Security and the Army Corps of Engineers. The interference in federal contracting by Trump concerned some overseeing the process, but the officials said Trump insisted Fisher could get the wall up faster and cheaper than other bidders. And I have to say, this really looks like an abuse of power to me. What about you? Josh Israel of the American Independent brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Kentucky's new Democratic governor, Andy Beshear, ordered that voting rights be restored to more than 100,000 people with nonviolent felony convictions. The move, a fulfillment of one of Beshear's campaign promises, is a direct reversal of an earlier act by his predecessor, former Republican Governor Matt Bevin. You know, Bevin is just so slimy. There was a guy who he pardoned, who dressed up as a cop, broke into some people's homes to rob them, killed one of them at least, and then when this guy was put in jail, his family threw some ungodly amount of money at Bevin, and then the guy was pardoned. That sounds like an abuse of power to me. Boy, it's almost rampant among the GOP. Kentucky has been one of the few states with lifetime disenfranchisement until today, Beshear said during a ceremony yesterday at the state's Capitol Rotunda. Beshear announced the move earlier in the week in his inaugural address. By my faith teaches me to treat others with dignity and respect. My faith also teaches forgiveness, he said. He added, by taking this step, by restoring these voting rights, we declare that everyone in Kentucky counts. We all matter. Well, we'll see what the Republicans say about that. All right, let's get to our break. And when we get back from that break, we are going to go through weather from around the world, and we are going to finish up with the stories that we have curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Kim Lowe. This week, Murder Most Fun. Knives Out is a smart murder mystery / comedy that also delivers some cutting social commentary. Plot-wise, Christopher Plummer's character, Harlan Thrombey, is a successful mystery writer who dies unexpectedly from an apparent suicide. However, mysterious private investigator Benoit Blanc, played by Daniel Craig with a southern drawl, is convinced that Thrombey has been murdered. Exactly who has hired Blanc is a mystery to everybody, including Blanc himself, but as he digs into Harlan's life and those around him, he uncovers that Harlan had as many skeletons as a character from one of his novels. As a wealthy patriarch, he's supporting his entire family, including his adult children and their families. Even his allegedly self-made realtor daughter, Linda, played to a T by Jamie Lee Curtis, is dependent on Daddy. And of course, they all have secrets. Indeed, the only person in Harlan's world who isn't there for a handout is his loyal immigrant nurse, Marta, who also has a secret. While the film is an effective whodunit, it's also a sharp critique of race, class, and family dynamics. Even the use of the term family comes under scrutiny, as the whole crew patronizingly calls Marta family, yet can't remember where she's from. Watching the family members turn on each other over their inheritance makes for most of the movie. With an all-star cast, including the aforementioned, along with Toni Collette, Michael Shannon, and Chris Evans, Knives Out is a well-crafted piece. A couple of criticisms could be that Plummer's character should have gotten more screen time, and perhaps that someone more memorable than Ana de Armas could have been cast as Marta. Still, Knives Out may be one to catch this holiday season, especially if you think your family is difficult. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Kim Lowe. Catch up with us at TakeTwoMovieReview.com and feed us back on our page on YouTube.
Hi, I'm Tom Hartman, and since you're listening to NetrootsRadio.com, show your progressive side and go to the donate button on the bottom of the homepage. It's progressives like you who power Netroots Radio and keep the progressive message beaming everywhere 24 hours a day. Just go to our donate button at the bottom of NetrootsRadio.com. Thank you for keeping progressive radio at full power.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1924. That was the day that longtime leader of the American Federation of Labor, Samuel Gompers, died. Gompers was born to a Jewish family in England. He was a cigar maker by trade. Gompers became involved with the labor movement at a very young age. He joined the Cigar Makers Local Union number 15 when he was just 14 years old. He became the head of the newly formed AFL in 1886, a position he held until 1894. A year later, he once again became president of the AFL and remained in that seat until his death. Under his leadership, the AFL became the leading labor organization in the United States. The AFL focused the strength of its organizing on skilled workers and tradesmen. The main emphasis of the union was winning better wages, hours, and working conditions for its membership. Some in the labor movement thought Gompers' approach was too conservative. The Industrial Workers of the World was formed in 1905, with a goal to reach out with the union message beyond skilled workers. Once Gompers was asked, "What does labor want?" His response still has relevance today. What does labor want? We want more schoolhouses and less jails, more books and less arsenals, more learning and less vice, more leisure and less greed, more justice and less revenge. In fact, more of the opportunities to cultivate our better natures, to make manhood more noble, womanhood more beautiful, and childhood more happy and bright. In 2007, a statue of Samuel Gompers was unveiled at a park named after the labor leader in Chicago. Gompers was one of the most significant figures in the U.S. labor movement.
Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever.
Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com.
I read the news today, oh boy.
It's time for Nicole Sandler's What's News from NicoleSandler.com and the Progressive Voices Network.
The House Judiciary Committee hearing on the articles of impeachment was a marathon 14 hours on Thursday, but stopped short of a final vote shortly after 11 p.m. Eastern, when Chairman Jerry Nadler announced they'd recess until Friday morning.
To be clear, the vote this committee just took was not a vote on final passage of the article. It was a procedural vote which precedes final passage of each of the articles. It has been a long 2 days of consideration of these articles, and it is now very late at night. I want the members on both sides of the aisle to think about what has happened over these last 2 days and to search their consciences before we cast our final votes. Therefore, the committee will now stand in recess until tomorrow morning at 10 a.m., at which point I will move to divide the question so that each of us may have the opportunity to cast up or down votes on each of the articles of impeachment, and to let history be our judge. The committee is in recess.
Mr. Chairman, there was no consulting from the minority ranking member on your schedule for tomorrow, in which you just blown up schedules for everyone. You chose not to consult the ranking member on a schedule issue of this magnitude?
So typical.
This is the kangaroo court that we're talking about.
It's
more
Stalin-esque than
unbelievable. Not even consult.
Just Stalin-esque. Let's have a dictator. It's good to hear about that.
10 a.m.
Unbelievable.
Although Nadler's decision seemed to catch everyone by surprise and infuriated the Republicans, it was the right thing to do. The game plan was to debate all day and hold a vote at around 6 p.m. But Republicans used every trick in the book to stretch things out and keep the debate going until late at night, presumably so they could then use the tired talking point that the Democrats voted on the impeachment articles in the dead of night. Well, on Friday, they'll do it in the light of day, beginning at 10 Eastern. Once the articles pass the committee on Friday, the full House is expected to hold a floor vote on the impeachment articles, most likely on Wednesday, before lawmakers leave for their holiday break. If approved, a trial about whether to convict Trump and remove him from office will be held in the Senate in January. Of course, the Senate is controlled by Republicans, and Majority Leader Mitch McConnell made it very clear on Fox News Thursday night that he has no intention of presiding over a fair trial.
Everything I do during this, I'm coordinating with White House counsel. There will be no difference between the president's position and our position as to how to handle this to the extent that we can. We don't have the kind of ball control on this that a typical issue, for example, comes over for the House. If I don't like it, we don't take it up. We have no choice but to take it up, but we'll be working through this process, hopefully in a fairly short period of time, in total coordination with the White House counsel's office and the people who are representing the president in the well of the Senate.
McConnell also said, quote, "There's no chance the president's going to be removed from office." Although Donald Trump decided not to participate in the hearings in any way, he actually did in his own unique way. He seems to have hit a new Twitter record with a reported 123 tweets and retweets on Thursday in one day. So the Republicans will let the president, who's being impeached, have control over his own Senate trial. Welcome to the dictatorship. In the midst of all this, and despite Republican protests to the contrary, the Pelosi-led House is getting other work done. On Thursday, they reached a deal in principle on annual spending bills to fund the government and avert a shutdown by a December 20th deadline. Details will be released on Monday. House Democrats on Thursday also passed a sweeping measure aimed at lowering prescription drug prices, a step to fulfill a long-held pledge by the party to constituents who have complained about soaring costs for medications we can no longer afford. Of course, the Democrats' bill was greeted with Republican resistance, with only 2 Republicans voting with all the Democrats to pass the measure, a mostly party-line vote of 230 to 192. The White House, obviously looking to change the subject from impeachment, announced progress on a U.S.-China trade deal, saying they had settled on final terms of a deal with Beijing. Trump is expected on Friday to announce a delay or cancellation of new tariffs scheduled to take effect this weekend on $160 billion of consumer products from China. China has remained silent as of early Friday morning on any possible deal. A quick reminder, open enrollment for health insurance under the Affordable Care Act ends on Sunday. This Sunday, December 15th. If you don't have health insurance, you can still get a good policy in many areas of the country at a lower cost than last year. Log on to healthcare.gov and be sure to do it before Sunday night at midnight. With just about all the returns in, it looks like out of 650 seats declared, the Tories have won 364 of them. This compared to Labour's 203, giving Boris Johnson a majority of 78 in Parliament, the largest majority the Conservatives have secured since the 1980s. The victory returns Boris Johnson to Downing Street as Prime Minister and sets the UK on course to leave the European Union at the end of January. Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn announced his intention to stand down, saying he would not lead his party into the next election. And the Federal Communications Commission actually did something right on Thursday, unanimously approving designating a 3-digit phone number, 988, as the country's national suicide hotline. No word yet when that'll go into effect. And finally, score another win for 16-year-old climate activist Greta Thunberg. After being named Time Magazine's Person of the Year, which, by the way, is not an award, but the person Time claims, quote, for better or worse, has done the most to influence the events of the year. Anyway, the toddler occupying the White House attacked Thunberg by tweeting, quote, so ridiculous. Greta must work on her anger management problem, then go to a good old-fashioned movie with a friend. Chill, Greta, chill. Well, if you go to Greta Thunberg's Twitter account today, her bio now reads, quote, a teenager working on her anger management problem, currently chilling and watching a good old-fashioned movie with a friend. Touché. And that's just a bit of what's news for now. I'm Nicole Sandler. If you appreciate these reports and the Nicole Sandler Show, I hope you'll consider making a contribution. My work is 100% listener supported, and I can't do it without your help. Find out more at NicoleSandler.com, and please click on that donate button.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. We always begin weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 44 degrees Fahrenheit, and we are having a lot of rain. Not just a little sprinkle, but actual rain with the Oregon metric. All right? Everywhere else in America that they call rain, we usually call it drizzle. So this is actual rain. Expected to have about a half an inch, though I think we're going to get more than that. And then tonight we're going to get probably about a tenth of an inch and another tenth of an inch tomorrow. And then a half an inch or more on Sunday. Indeed. Winds are currently out of the east-northeast and about 1 to 2 miles per hour, though will pick up in a couple of hours to 5 to 10 miles per hour, and then will decrease to light and variable overnight and remain light and variable tomorrow. Pollen is rated at none. The air quality index is 30 parts per million, and that daytime UV index locally is low at 1. Barometric pressure, of course, is falling at 30.14 inches. Visibility is down to 2 miles. There is quite a bit of fog in the area, of course. And relative humidity is at 95%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property. And these people positively live around the world. London is 48 and mostly cloudy, with looks like about an 100% chance of Brexit. Sorry, England. You did it to yourself. Okay. Let's see. Paris is 48 and partly cloudy. Rome is 58 and mostly cloudy. Kyiv is 31 degrees and cloudy. Kabul is 38 with smoke. Ouch. Hong Kong is 61 and fair. Tokyo is 45 and mostly cloudy. Sydney, Australia is 68 and cloudy with a lot of smoke in their air also, just to let you know. San Francisco, California is 52 and cloudy with a flood watch because they're getting more rain than what we're getting here. And New York is 42 degrees Fahrenheit and cloudy with chance of snow. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property. And these people positively live around the world. David Alier Garcia of Reuters brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. A Salvadoran man seeking asylum in the United States was kidnapped and murdered in the Mexican border city of Tijuana, where he was sent to wait for his asylum court hearing under a migrant protection program instated by Donald Trump. Critics of the migrant protection protocols have argued that the migrants affected by the initiative, mostly from the impoverished and violence-plagued countries of Honduras, Guatemala, and El Salvador, are at risk in Mexico. They sent us back. We said Tijuana is really dangerous. There was a lot of crime, but they didn't listen to us. They said that they couldn't do anything because those were Trump's orders, the man's widow said. The widow and her lawyer asked for her and her husband's name to remain anonymous for security reasons. Along the U.S.-Mexico border, the migrants, many of them babies and toddlers, are living in high-crime cities, often in crowded shelters and tents or on the streets for weeks or months that it takes to get a U.S. asylum hearing. This 35-year-old Salvadoran man, father of two, had waited for 4 months in Tijuana, where he found a job at a pizzeria. They kidnapped my husband, his widow said. He disappeared, and unfortunately, when I found him, he was dead. He was killed on the 20th of November after being stabbed in the neck, chest, and abdomen, according to a death certificate seen by Reuters on Thursday yesterday. Mexican authorities said the man was dismembered, and they are investigating the circumstances surrounding his death. More blood on the hands of Trump, and more blood on the hands of the deplorables who protect him.
Je te donne c'est mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers. C'est tout.
Anonymous worker bees at Reuters bring us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. Prime Minister Scott Morrison appointed a woman to head a major Australian spy agency for the first time. Rachel Noble will become the next Director General of the Australian Signals Directorate, which intercepts electronic communications from foreign countries. Her appointment to this leadership role is a significant step forward for women in the national security sector, and we congratulate her, Morrison said in a statement. Noble, who will begin her new role in February of 2020, will lead the ASD at a time when Australia is increasingly concerned about cyber attacks. In March, the ASD concluded China's Ministry of State Security was responsible for a cyber attack on its parliament and 3 major political parties. Australia decided not to go public with its findings for fear of risking its trade ties with China. And of course, China denies it was responsible for the hack. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period, but you do know that Netroots Radio is going to broadcast on. And we're going to meet up on Monday for River City Hash Monday. So stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night and all weekend for all the breaking news as it breaks. And we'll meet up here on Monday, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma robe à fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme aux langues de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma robe à fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Ba-da-da-dum-dee-da-dum, 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 dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-dee-da-dum, 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 dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver, dans mon jardin d'hiver.